All right, Patriots Lament, live on Friday, April 3rd, 2020. Quick market update, and then Bob Wenzel from Economic Policy Journal will be joining us shortly. Corey's going to take you guys through the numbers for today. Let her rip, man.
All right, we got U.S. COVID-19 cases at 275,000. I got feedback. I need to mute that. Okay. 275,000 cases, 7,000 deaths. Global cases just crossed the 1 million mark. We are at 1,095,000 cases with 58,000 deaths. The Dow closed at 21,052, which was down 1.7%. S&P is at 2,488, which is down 1.5%. NASDAQ is at 7,373, it's down 1.5%. Oil closed after a huge spike at $29. Some news on that coming out of Venezuela, and that was up 14.5%. Gold closed at 1648, which was up 0.7%. Silver at $14.5, which was down 1%. Gold to silver ratio was 112, up 0.66%. The dollar index is at 100.66, up 0.47%. Bitcoin closed down 1% at 6,734. And in the crypto, the biggest gainer was Monero, which jumped 5% today, closing at $53.
You had some comments on Monero specifically.
Oh, yeah. So we've been seeing that since the first big stock market crash a couple of weeks ago, Bitcoin has been following the normal stocks in the stock market, which surprised a bunch of people, including the CEO of Coinbase. And since then, the cryptos have been pretty closely following, not always, but pretty much following the stock market. And Monero is a little bit different than the other cryptos in that it is specifically designed with privacy in mind, and it's supposed to be much harder to trace or not traceable at all. So it's a very, it holds true to a lot of the original crypto ideas that have been compromised due to things like on-ramp, off-ramp, and following your money around once it's in crypto. So Monero seems to be like a good general purpose, not like a speculative asset or anything like that, but it's a more usable cryptocurrency. And it will be interesting to see if it continues to break out away from the rest of the cryptocurrencies.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. We have Bob Wenzel on StreamYard right now. We're going to bring him in.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Bob, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Bob.
How we doing? Hi,
We're doing
Corey.
well.
I don't know you, but
Good.
Hi.
if you're as good as these guys, you're awesome.
All right, well, thank you. Good to see
He's
you.
been a great addition, believe me.
Okay. Where do we get going?
So this week, we've been doing a show Monday, Wednesday, Friday, just at kind of at market close or a little bit after, and we've been watching where different stuff moves around. You know, oil, precious metals, Wall Street markets, crypto markets, and the way that they're moving relative to each other is very odd. We've been trying to make sense of that, and we've also been talking about modern monetary theory, MMT, a little bit,
Right.
and this idea of kind of money as a service instead of money as a commodity. what's your take on what's going on? We're trying to make kind of heads and tails of it. What is your take on what's going on with the way everything's moving around? There's this thing with oil.
Well,
yeah.
Basically, what's going on? You have what really is a complete shakeup of the entire system. There's an economist by the name of G.L.S. Shackle, who I'm convinced must have been a stock market trader and lived through different crashes and things. Because what he talked about is, there are all these trends that go on and go on. Boy, they're all coming after me now. So they're all these trends that continue, and then what happens is you have a situation, what he called a kaleidoscopic change. So all the trends that used to occur no longer apply anymore, and it's like a kaleidoscope. So everything's different, and you just see a completely different picture. So that's what's going on now. Some of the reasons that is going on, for example, with gold, where you see gold making all kinds of erratic moves. Sometimes you see it going up against the stock market, then other days you see it going down. Now, before this crisis developed, I'm convinced, and I have something called the EPJ Daily Alert, where I advise investors and things along those lines. And what was going on is you had a situation where it looked like the big players were getting into gold. I mean, all Goldman Sachs, everybody was coming out and making advisories to buy gold, and it just looked like they were going to have a play in gold. So what happens is you have this crash, the country's closed down, so all these big players have all this money in gold, and meanwhile they're getting margin calls and everything else in other positions, so they might just have to liquidate their gold position, not because they want to, but they need to raise cash. And where they're going to raise cash is something that hasn't gone down. So that's one of the things that's going on. The oil situation is kind of a unique situation because the key oil players, Russia really needs an oil price of about $45 to $50. I think Putin even talked about that today. But in order for oil to pay the bills in Saudi Arabia needs a much higher price of $80. So there might be a case. Russia is supposedly one that broke the compact and said they would no longer be supporting the oil price. But it might have been a case where Russia and Saudi Arabia might have been in cahoots together. And given that demand is collapsed, so you're going to have tremendous pressure on oil right there. What you do on top of that is you flood the market with oil and push it down even more to try and kill U.S. oil production, because the president of Rosneft, the top Russian oil company, he is very upset with the United States for putting sanctions on his company to make it much more difficult for him to sell his oil. So he has incentive to sort of smash U.S. oil. Saudi Arabia has incentive, although they sort of play footsie with the United States. So it's more complex, but they would like to see U.S. oil smashed because they need an $80 price to pay the bills that they're spending on a regular basis. So there's complex stuff going on, and that's why you see these wild swings. At one minute you hear reports, OPEC is going to put production limits on again, and so it swings up, and then Trump talks about Saudi Arabia and Russia getting a deal, and it goes up, then it sounds like it doesn't happen, it crashes down. So my advice to my EPJ Daily Alert advisors is say, hey, forget about these crazy swings because they're going to swing all over the place. There's no way you can determine what they're going to be from one day to the next. You have to ignore this and pay attention to what's going to happen once the crisis is over. And once the crisis is over, you're going to be in a completely different scenario, and that's when you have to what you have to position for. When stuff goes down here, if it's going to be a buy after the crisis is over, you buy it when it's down, and then you just grab on and wait for the other side of the crisis. So that's what you have to do.
When the other side ever shows up.
Yeah, exactly.
So like on oil prices, nobody can make ends meet $20 or $25 or $29.
Right. So Saudi Arabia can pump profitably at $28.
Okay.
However, MBS is spending so much money, and he really has to pay it out to his citizens, because there would be a revolution in Saudi Arabia if he didn't. So he needs the price up. So yeah, I mean, at some point it'll get up after the crisis, but really strategically, I mean, if I was Russia or Saudi Arabia, this is the time you would really want to smash oil, because the demand isn't there. So you're not going to be able to get the price up anyways, and you just smash it down and knock out U.S. producers to the degree you can do that.
We've been following some other kind of crisis investor guys on YouTube, and some of them have said that the shale oil, like the North Dakota shale oil, there was a bunch of debt financing for that anyway. Right. And that wasn't looking like a good long-term project. Like 2021, 2022 is kind of a day of reckoning for that in any case. Right. Do you have a detailed read on that?
Yeah. What you really have to really dig into, and I'm not expert enough to determine that, is how easy it is to shut these things off and start them up again. Because at these prices, it's not profitable. So at some point they become they shut them down, and then the question is how quickly. But as far as the debt restructuring, that doesn't really, except for a very short period of time. If somebody owes too much debt on a house or whatever it is, and that house still has value, then it's just restructured, it's taken over or whatever, and then it's put back to use. So if the oil field can be functional at a higher price, it will be put back to use regardless of what the financing. It might have completely different ownership. The bank might own it. The bank might sell it to someone. There might be a merger. Many, many things could happen. So that's not as important as the key with regard to how many of these oil operations can be reopened once they're shut down. And you get a broad spectrum of opinion on which ones can and which one can't. Some of them clearly can't. That's obvious from the experts. But the percentage as to what can be reopened and what can't is the big question.
Okay.
They are really used to shutting down and restarting. I have two brothers that work there in the North Dakota fields, and they'll be going gangbusters with everything they have one day, and literally a day later, they'll shut everything down for a week. Oh, prices went back up. Everyone will go back to work for several months. Then they'll be down again. They'll shut down. It's really odd the way they can just, we're not working tomorrow.
It depends upon the field. I mean, and this gets into, sort of an expertise that I don't have, other than the surface expertise of getting reports that, there are some wells you can do that with, and other wells that you can't do that with. So that's the story there. So
we've been in the currency markets, like everybody's piling into dollars, or in the market in general, right? Everybody's piling into dollars. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. And we've been having an ongoing conversation about the ongoing inflation, deflation, demand for dollars, velocity of money type conversation. And then we've been talking about MMT a little bit, and how MMT fits into that, because dollars aren't really commodity based, right? They're backed by nothing, and there's no reserve requirement anymore at all. So how do you make sense? Like if you talk about something like pricing gold in dollars, which is how we generally talk about gold, how do you make sense of the value of the dollar, and how how all these emergency policies are affecting that in this kind of environment?
Yeah, well, clearly in the short term, you're getting a flight into what is called quality, which somehow is viewed as the dollar. So that's why the dollar is going up now. It's much more sound from an international perspective to be in dollars than almost any other currency. That's the short term. The long term might be different. I think it's a race to the bottom for all these currencies. So you can't really say, the dollar is going to perform worse than all the other currencies. But at the same time, relative to prices and what we do as consumers, all these currencies are getting destroyed. And the dollar, I just put out my alert this morning, and with the latest Fed money supply numbers, and the money supply is exploding. They are printing money like I've never seen before. And so consequently, that means somewhere on the other side of the crisis, you're going to see an explosion in prices that we haven't seen in a very, very long time. It's going to be a situation where the CPI may not pick it up in the beginning, because there's going to be some discounting. Say everything's opened up in June 1st or whatever. I mean, people, after being cooped up for a couple of months, they're going to want to get out. So the restaurants are going to be filled. People will be back in the stores and shopping and things like that. But what you're going to have is people are going to be afraid, certainly to go on cruise ships. So they're going to have to discount heavily. Airlines, hotels may have to discount. It's not really clear. So what you're going to get in a situation like that is maybe some discounting there. So the CPI is going to be picking up all these ups and downs. But the things we're going to be wanting to buy, there's going to be tremendous bidding for that, because really everybody's going to have more money in their pocket. It's going to be crazy, really. Inflation, money printing that we haven't seen in 2008, 1982, none of these. I mean, it's going to top all that when it's all done.
Yeah, there was a guy we were listening to that said, if there's one thing that modern economists get right, so to speak, it's that they rarely make the mistake that was made in the past. So, like in the Depression, there was price deflation in 1929. And his opinion was there was no way they were going to allow price deflation. So they would likely tremendously overshoot the other way, just at the very least to say we didn't make the same mistake again. We made a new mistake. Right.
But the whole idea of there being a deflation really doesn't make any sense, okay? Because if you kept the economy the way it was, the first thing that's going to happen is I expect a manufacturing boom. And the reason I expect a manufacturing boom is because everybody's going to start thinking, I can't live the way I used to. No one's going to live with just one extra roll of toilet paper. Everybody's going to keep a supply just in case, Tony, what's his name? Anthony, I'm trying to say, I don't want to say Fauci. Fauci. What he does is he tells us there's another wave coming and everything's locked down again, and all that kind of crazy stuff. So people are going to prepare for that. They may start buying their winter clothes down here in the 48 states in September versus October or something like that, just in case the stores close down again. So you're going to have all kinds of spending. Anybody that had operated on just-in-time inventory is not going to manage the business on just-in-time. They're not going to. They know what happened this time from Apple on down. They're not going to say, well, I'm just going to order just in time to put it all together to get it into the retail stores or wherever they're selling. And what they're going to do is they're going to order a winter supply of whatever is needed. And so you're going to have a manufacturing boom in that sense.
Okay, just to build up the inventory.
Right.
So we've been talking about sectors. We've been talking about short-term, long-term sectors to invest in. And one that's come up repeatedly is various forms of warehousing. What do you think about that? Like, with just-in-time, the savings with just-in-time delivery is that you eliminate all your storage and all of your all your inventory, right? Which isn't doing anything for you. But that only makes money for you if your inventory is actually a liability. And now it appears that inventory is an asset. What do you see? So, a big boom in production to fill the supply chain again. Do you see something like that where companies start investing in warehousing again, so they have local stores of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to do what they have to do to stock up and place it somewhere. So you'll see that in warehouses and inventories. But the thing is, you don't have to really get tricky in here. Okay, when this thing turns around in the obvious areas, I mean, it's going to turn around dramatically. I like it. There was a winter I spent in Chicago, and it's almost like a lockdown. You're pretty cooped up. I mean, it's really cold outside, so people go out a little. Maybe not compared to, I don't know which one of you guys are in Alaska, but it's not compared to winter there. But for down south, Chicago's pretty cold in the winter, so everybody sort of stays cooped up. And then that first week of spring, when it gets warm, I mean, everybody is out. It just explodes. The restaurants are busy. There's people all over the streets. The stores are busy. And I think you're going to see something very similar on the lockdown, depending upon how the lockdown develops. But you could see that in developing where it's just a really boom. So you don't really and there's going to be so much money on the sidelines. The Fed is printing an incredible amount of money. So I see very much of a V kind of recovery here for the stock market. And for most of the economy, again, cruise lines, forget about. We don't know how really airlines and hotels will develop in the short term. But we're basically going to have when people are let out of their cages, they're going to stay out of their cages.
Okay. Yep.
Now, I'm curious. I know Josh is in Alaska. Are you guys in Alaska, or where are you?
I'm in Alaska right now.
Okay, David.
I'm in southern Ontario, so I'm about an hour and a half outside of Toronto.
Okay, so you're still in. It's pretty cold where you are right now.
It can be. Yeah, it was like 60 today, but it's getting down to freezing at night still.
Okay.
And Mike's stuck in Florida.
I'm stuck in Florida.
Oh wow.
I'm supposed to head back to Alaska. Right?
Yeah.
I think he would be facing some quarantine time if he came right now, though.
Yeah.
You guys have about 4 deaths in. Let me check this here quickly.
Last I saw, we had 140 cases, and about 1/3 of the state cases are in Fairbanks.
Really?
Yeah.
You see, but the thing is, with the cases, it's very, very tricky because it really depends upon how much testing is going on. Different testing is going on. So you got to look at the deaths, and you guys have 3 deaths, and probably more people freeze to death up there than get the coronavirus at this point. And it probably what's your temperature? It probably the virus probably doesn't survive well in very low temperatures.
Viruses are fairly stable at low temperatures and are only really effectively destroyed by heat.
Right.
So hot, humid climates kill it quickly, but it can survive on cold surfaces for.
Yes. The study on I know on the upside is 47, but I would think that on the downside there's no. I mean, when you're hitting below zero,
viruses are weird. They're not living in any way. They're just kind of biomechanical machines, and they seem to be damaged just by thermal jiggling. And when it's cold out, they don't jiggle as much, so they hold together longer.
Yeah. Okay.
What do you think about the other conversation we've been having in parallel to the economic one? Is that you've written a couple articles on this. You wrote the article about Michael Jordan playing in the finals, when he had the flu. Right. And in a lot of ways, this whole thing feels like a simulation. It feels like policymakers have an opportunity to try out a bunch of stuff for later. And it turns out to be so far, this is not actually that big of a deal as far as the virus goes. It has yet to be worse than the flu, but every policy thing that you can imagine is being implemented right now. Universal basic income was just rolled out under a Republican, right? With no resistance whatsoever. And all sorts of border restrictions and
the passports are not being issued. The state will now be paying for uninsured corona treatments. So if people go to the hospital and they don't have insurance, it's covered.
Right.
So yeah, so
MMT, Trump a couple days ago, he said, basically said, "Why not? It's our money supply. We can do what we want." And that sounds like something that an MMT economist would
Right.
say.
Right.
so yeah, so we've been having a conversation about like there's the game of kind of government controlled capitalism that we were all playing a few months ago. You know, like in December and January, we were still playing that game. You go to work, you make money, you spend money, you save a little bit more than you spend, and that's how you accumulate wealth across time. It appears that, like you're talking about, you know, this V-shaped recovery and
Right.
plan for what's on the other side. We've been talking about that, and it appears that not only is the distribution of dollars and selection of which industries, you know, government favoring industries, it appears that not only that's changing, but it feels like the game itself is changing. It feels like we're going to come out the other side no longer in a world of work, earn money, save some, but in a world of something radically different. What is your feel on that?
Yeah, you don't know what will stick, what won't on the other side. I mean, it's extremely dangerous because really what you have, I mean, it appears, judging by the streets here in San Francisco, you've got 99% people falling in line and sort of staying in lockdown and not breaking any of the orders or anything like that. I mean, I see a few places. Somebody sent me something in Idaho about a sheriff objecting, and Josh just sent me something about the bear country, and you guys fighting back against objections to the hunting of bears. So, you know, there's some resistance, but it's extremely, extremely limited, even among many libertarians. I mean, they think the lockdown is justified in many ways. So it's kind of a situation where it's a very, very good opportunity for government to make moves and justify it based on the crisis. So that's what I think we're seeing right now. And I don't see how it's not good at all. And you don't really know what's going to stick. You know, this last bailout bill was 1,000 pages long, so you really don't know what's in that. You know, some things might be opened up. For example, there was the limitation on deductions for lunches and cocktails and things like that you could only take a percentage. Well, now they're trying to eliminate that so you can take a full business lunch as an expense. So, you know, there's like minor pockets of moving towards freedom, but there's going to be an awful lot that are going to be in the other direction. And, you know, as Nancy Pelosi says, you don't really know what's going to happen with these until, you know, they're passed and somebody sees. I mean, no one's read these bills. The congressmen get it an hour before they're supposed to vote on it. So you don't know what's going on, what's in them. And that's a serious problem. So I'm not optimistic. I mean, it'll open up. You know, the country will open up again, and a lot of it will feel the same. But every once in a while, we're going to bump up against something. We'll say, you know, you can't do that anymore. And then this annoying social distance thing. Okay, I mean, now they're putting tapes in stores. And there's a Walgreens out here where I even see people in line 6 feet apart before they're allowed into a Walgreens until somebody comes out and stuff. And, you know, I mean, I'm just not the kind of guy that's built for that kind of nonsense. So, you know, I may end up in Alaska with you guys.
Plenty of room.
Yeah. No problem. Social distancing there.
I noticed in your article about the plastic bag ban reversal, it wasn't just that they removed the old ban, but they had to. They couldn't just take the old law away. They had to institute a new one that reversed what everyone had been practicing.
Right.
For the last
Yeah.
15 years.
These people are very much. They just like to micromanage. They're mini power freaks, and you can when they have these city council meetings, they come up and they just put different things on. There's no consistency. There's no logic. Nothing. They just it must pass through their mind. They must think these things up at night and say, "Hey, I think I'm going to propose this at the city council," and they vote on limiting. One day it was toys that were included in McDonald's with McDonald's burgers and things like that for the kids. They eliminated that, and they just come up with random stuff that, if you probe any of these deeper, they don't make sense. And in the banning of plastic bags never made sense. It just, they don't understand the economics of waste or even where the problem with plastic going into the ocean. That's in India. It's not over here. We're not dumping plastic into the ocean that way. And cloth bags right from the beginning were known to be carriers of disease. So it's this is nothing new. They just do random kind of power freak moves.
Yeah.
One of the convenient trends of this whole situation has been all of the desired policies for fighting anthropogenic global warming have basically been implemented in the last few weeks.
Right.
Travel restrictions, like approval of necessary businesses, like who deems them necessary, who says another business is not necessary. Big reductions in energy consumption, in air travel,
telecommuting.
Right, exactly. And this falls under the metric of, or under the rubric of, like,
Maria,
all of these policy things that people have been waiting to implement for so long, just like boom, all at once. And
can I use your hotspot?
it seems it'll be interesting to see which ones of those are unwound, like you were talking about, because there's a lot of people who are pushing for many of these policies. I mean, UBI again, universal basic income, and like, how do you unwind that on the backside of this? Like, once you've been giving everybody a check for a few months, how do you take that away? And in a world where that doesn't get taken away, all the incentive structures are different.
Right. I mean, if they were to keep it on, I mean, it's obviously insane. You can't keep whatever percent of the country unemployed for that period of time without the economy collapsing and not coming back at all. I mean, then we're almost talking Venezuela type inflation, because they would just have to print it to support that. I think they'll probably roll that back, and the people probably understand they're only getting this for a month or two, and that's it, and then they're going to have to get back to their jobs. So, to the degree that occurs, that the UBI people are sort of hailing this as a victory, but it's universal basic income is not bailing out the entire country because they all lost their jobs. That your universal basic income is paying everybody a base income, and not really associating it with regard to work or anything like that. So they're trying to grab onto something as a victory that's not really. It's technically it feels more like a bailout than it does just deciding, well, everybody deserves extra money, and not taking into consideration an economic collapse. So I think it'll pull back. If it doesn't, we're going to be in a situation where inflation will really, really go through the roof. But I see it pulling back, and it's not a victory for UBI people. They're scam artists to begin with, and what they're really doing is sort of hopping on this and playing like it's UBI. It's not UBI. UBI is much worse, and let's hope that never develops.
To jump into politics a little bit, do you think that Trump is kind of pulling in some of Bernie's ideas to take the left's lunch, so to speak, before the election? Or is this just necessary for?
There's two problems with Trump. First of all, he's listening to Fauci, who I just have a piece up on targetliberty.com where I talk about his background. The guy's been a scam artist since the early days, since the AIDS days. He's very, 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 very dangerous. He tested pregnant women, got women who were addicted on heroin, and who were pregnant and tested them with AZT, which is very, very dangerous for development, and then sort of stopped the test in the middle because it is a dangerous test, and then sort of declared a victory on the test and allowed it in all women and in all mothers, and basically never really followed up on the kids because there could be extremely serious mental problems with these kids down the road because of this AZT. And he just passed it for whatever reason. I mean, he's blocked other scientists from appearing on television shows, major shows like Nightline and 60 Minutes and stuff like that. I mean, he's a slick bureaucratic operator, and I think he's extremely dangerous. And somehow he's got Trump's ear, so Trump listens to him, and so that's number one, and more so than Bernie Sanders. It's what this guy is whispering into Trump's ear. Then on top of that, Trump is looking at the polls, and in my mind, bizarrely, the polls are going up for Trump because people seem to accept what he's doing and think it's great stuff for the country. So as long as he sees that, he's going to try and appear to be the battler of the virus and play that out for as long as he can. To the degree he can play that out, Biden has no airtime, or if Cuomo comes in to replace him, whatever, he's limiting anybody else getting any television time. So from a political perspective for him, it's terrible for the economy, but it makes sense for him to be able to drag this out until he sees some kind of drop in the polls. I'm sure he's getting tremendous pressure on the other side from his businessmen buddies, Tom Barrack, who owns a lot of commercial real estate, Sheldon Adelson, who owns properties in Las Vegas and is virtually completely shut down. I mean, those guys must be putting tremendous pressure on him. So he'll probably, hopefully, open it up sometime, maybe June 1st. But he's got Fauci whispering in his ear that millions are going to die if he opens up the country, which is no evidence for that occurring at all. And you got the polls, which are showing that people think he's doing a great job. So those are really the incentives there. And that also means, well, all these people are not working, so I have to do something for them. So that's when the Bernie Sanders stuff comes in. But it's not like he's not trying to move left as he's trying to balance my polls are up. The businessmen are hurting, so I gotta shuffle money to them. But if I shuffle money to them and I don't shuffle it to the people, they're gonna come after me. So I'm gonna have to shuffle money to them. So he's not. I don't think he's trying to position as much as a lefty as he is trying to manage within his own perspective of where he is and who he has to keep happy.
Right. Josh, Mike, do you guys have any points you want to run by?
Oh, I just want. Yeah, documents that you have to get to be able to work now. Do you see those going away after this is over, or do you see it just continuing as another bureaucracy?
Yeah, we discussed that a little bit earlier. Mm-hmm. It's not. They're going to open it up. They can't possibly keep this thing locked down forever. They'll really destroy the country will be destroyed. So they'll open it up. But what they're going to do is they're going to sneak in all kinds of stuff in these bailout bills. As I pointed out, this last one was over 1,000 pages long, and nobody knows what's in them. They give them to a congressman an hour before they have to pass them. Nobody has read these things. It's legalese. It makes reference to other documents, so you would have to actually read it, then find the other document to see how that document how it changes things. So those are all in there by special interests. Part of it is in there by lobbyists. Part of it is in there by the deep state. These guys are better operators than anybody else, so they've got stuff in there that they can pull out at any time. So they'll kind of open it up, and then we'll just sort of be moving along and then sort of bump into something. And we'll say, well, we want to do this and remember doing it in the past. They're going to say, well, you can't do that anymore because of, this was in the bill. Sort of what happened a lot with 9/11. We're still learning some of the things that are coming out of 9/11, and some of it sticks to quote unquote, correct the problem. We got TSA now groping us at the airports, and you never had that in the old days. And I'm sure there's going to be test requirement. Who knows? Mandatory vaccines. Who knows what these people tracking of people, so we know who's where that might have a virus or something like that. That's the kind of stuff that will develop very, very quickly. And of course, that's extremely dangerous because you track for one thing and you can track for many other things too. So it's a dangerous road we're going down.
Yeah, we've been trying to identify action items for ourselves and our listeners on YouTube and on the radio. There's a lot of stuff that's outside of our control, like a lot of the policy stuff. But then there are a few things that are in our control. And one of the things that libertarians are really good at is having way too much information and not acting on it. We've all fallen into that category before. And so if you were to distill down, like at this point in the whole development of things, 2 or 3 key action points, like if there was one above all else, and then maybe a secondary, a third one, for people to consider, what would they be?
Okay, well, the first thing I think you have to, especially if you're in a major city like I am in anywhere in the continental United States, if you're in a major city, you have to think about, if things really get bad, where you want to locate, A, in the country, or B, outside the country. Because, this just shows you how quickly things can turn. This is a teaching moment for us. One day we're walking around doing what we want. The next day, somehow the masses are convinced we're under attack by this virus, and everybody has to be locked down. Normal life has stopped. We go places and we have to stay 6 feet apart from each other, and so on and so forth. So it changed so quickly, so dramatically. We don't know the next way it's going to change. So we really have to start thinking. Maybe it's not as much as in Alaska, but for us in the continental United States here, you're going to have to think about what's going on with regard to the lower 48 when we're in the calm mode. What could happen and where can we go? Ideally, I think the best kind of country to keep in mind is a country that they're all going to be authoritarian, but you want a country that, it's sort of a lower income country where you can sort of still have a good lifestyle. There's nice restaurants, nice places to go, nice things to do, but the government isn't as strong. The economy isn't as strong, so that even if the government wanted to enforce things on you, it would be very, very difficult for them unless they had a real military crackdown. So you got to find that place where they just don't have the capability to track you like a rich country like we see here in the United States or Western Europe. That's number one. So you got to find that place. And then I would say, because there's a lot of people down south that don't have guns. And I tell you, if you don't have a gun, this should be a lesson in getting your gun, because you don't know what the next crisis is going to look like, what they're going to do. You could have people out on the streets marauding, and you're going to have to protect your family. So if you don't have your guns, as soon as we can't buy them now in California, but as soon as things open up, buy your guns and learn how to shoot them. Go up to Alaska and get some real good lessons or something like that. I don't know, but
bear hunting.
Yeah, there you go.
So I'll tell my wife we need to buy some more guns. I like that idea.
Yeah. So anyway, so those are the top 2, and then after that, you gotta think in terms of diversification. You can't have just one bank account. You can't just have one stock brokerage account. Maybe not in the same country. You just gotta think in terms of. I'll tell you, I once had a conversation with a Citibank, a high top official with Citibank, who was in charge of handling super wealth. These are overseas South American billionaires. And what he told me about them, and he told me this was before 9/11, And he told me, he says, their hobby is thinking how to protect themselves and how to protect their assets. That's what they're thinking about all the time, because they know there's always people after them and there's always people after their money. He says it's not as much billionaires in the United States, but in South America or anywhere else, anybody that is super wealthy thinks about that all. They don't leave themselves alone with people they don't know. They live a different lifestyle, and that's the key. And unfortunately, that's what we have to begin to think with. I mean, we have to think about, okay, what can go wrong? How can I protect myself? What are my ways? What if this is blocked? How do I get if there's no plane flights and I need to get out of the country? How do I do that? If this border is blocked, what do I do? If it comes very, very quickly, how can I protect myself in my house? All those kind of things. Unfortunately, we have to think, and the money itself. I mean, you got to keep some, under your mattress, right? You got to keep cash, and you've got to keep gold coins and silver coins. You just really have to do that. You have to diversify, realize you may not be able to protect everything, but if you protect some, you're going to be much, much better off than anybody else. And now we really have to think about very serious inflation. If they print the way they're continuing to print right now, inflation is going to really heat up. And I've talked to people who've come out of Yugoslavia and places where there's been hyperinflation, and I ask them, what's it like? And they tell me the people that really live like kings, there are people who live like kings aside from the government people that are printing the money. The people that live like kings are the ones that have assets and had gold, or in Yugoslavia, if they had dollars and things like that, because you can buy, people are desperate for getting hard currency and coins and things like that. And so if you can do that kind of thing, you're going to have a tremendous edge against other people. So it's really 1, 2, 3. It's about protecting yourself right now, thinking about ways that you can move given different situations. You got to play out all the scenarios, how worst case scenarios of how things could be shut down, how you might have military guards somewhere, and how you're going to get past them, that kind of thing. Are there backwoods that better than anybody else, or is there some kind of actually right now media is considered an essential occupation here in San Francisco, so it gives me a little more leeway. I just can pull out my press pass, and that gets me through. But there'll be different things. You're gonna have to figure out how to operate under it. You're gonna have to think what would work. What do I have to adjust for, and how do I prepare for that now? And you got to make it another hobby.
It sounds like what you're saying is that when you're talking about the super wealthy, that they have to take responsibility for their own security that the government usually does for them.
Right.
Still on the phone?
Sorry about that. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Corey.
No, they're just having to take on responsibility for something that's usually offered by for us, the United States government. So.
Hey, I'll call you back. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, I mean, they really have to. They have to protect themselves, and they know it. So they think about that all the time, and and now we have to. Unfortunately, we don't have the resources they have. I mean, for them, it's keeping the private plane fueled up, and stuff like that, and making sure the pilot is paid well. But
Right. Very cool.
Do you see freedoms? We've talked a lot about money, and Pelosi's already talking about we need another bailout. Again, round 2 already, or however many rounds this will make it. What sort of freedoms do you think will change outside of monetary stuff, like our normal, what we consider, what I guess normies think of their constitutional rights and stuff? What kind of freedoms do you think we'll see differently on the other side?
Yeah, I think the biggie out of this one is going to be tracking us. I mean, they're going to justify it based on they need to know who might be infected with the virus and who might not. So, maybe we have to sort of register our cell phones somehow. And I mean, they can sort of track us to a degree now, but I think it's going to really intensify as far as that. They're going to really know where we are. And that when you think about it, that's kind of scary because, right now they're telling us we're in lockdown. So if you want to meet, 4 or 5 people in the resistance, if you take your cell phones with you, you're gonna be in trouble, because they are following where people are. The mayor of Los Angeles said that he can tell there's 99% compliance with the lockdown, and he can tell that because they're getting information from the phone companies as to where people are and how much, so they're tracking us for that. So and I was also told that before they shut down the beaches in Florida, when the kids were at spring break, they recorded the cell phones those people, and then like a week later, when they were back, wherever they were going to, they showed those same cell phones in different parts of the country. So they know who we are. So that's just going to intensify. And it's going to be much, much easier for government to get their hands on that data when there's an emergency. And then, of course, they'll stretch it out, and it won't only be for viruses. They're going to word the that part of the legislation very, very loosely. So in case of an emergency or something like that, and then they're going to call everything an emergency whenever they want to find out about somebody. Of course, a lot of this backfires on the politicians themselves. They are not really the brightest people in the world. They're going to end up getting tracked as much as anybody else. They're pretty idiotic about this stuff, but it's going to be pretty bad out there.
What do we say that contact tracing works as well for ideas as it does for viruses?
Right.
Yeah, very, very cool. Thank you for your time here, coming on and giving us your take. Can you give our listeners the best way to get in touch with you and to find your information?
Okay, sure. So I've got my economicpolicyjournal.com is my main website. You can go to that. I have another one, targetliberty.com, but it's all sort of linked around. So if you go to economicpolicyjournal.com, you can find things there. My Twitter account is Wenzel Economics. So that's another way to find me. And, you can poke around and get it all around from there. I've got a couple of books out. You can find those. There are links at Economic Policy Journal and Twitter for those.
Very cool.
And if people want to sign up with your daily alert?
Yeah, there's information on that at Economic Policy Journal. So, just check it out. Go that way. And actually, you can go to epjdailylalert.com and sign up that way too. So,
very cool.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Guys. Yeah.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thanks for everything you do, Bob.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
All right. That was good.
That was good. Yeah. Fun to get his take. Interesting that it's not that much more definitive than what we've been talking about. Like trying to figure out which way is up. It's like, well, we'll see.
Still on that sideways curve that you've been talking about.
One of the thoughts I had reading some of the notes from the beginning, he was talking about the wild swings due to too many things going on at once. And he said, forget about the swings. You can't predict them. So focus on where things will be on the other side of this. But what we've seen is that again, we've talked about this, the narratives are diverging, and it's everything from V-shaped recovery and 30% more to go, and then it turns around to martial law. Nobody's getting out of the country again. So the idea that there's just going to be some discernible end to this is itself a narrative. So
That's true. It's a little bit like 9/11. When did the 9/11 emergency policies end?
Yeah.
I think they just add on to them.
Right.
It's a rolling emergency.
But well, like airplanes started flying again, but the TSA was there, and warrantless wiretaps started. So yeah,
And then the data centers to stop preemptively stop terrorism and that kind of stuff.
yep.
You guys want to talk a little bit about the we mentioned it there with him, but a little bit about the stoppage of passport issuance in the United States. So I think that's fairly important. If people don't know, so was it 2 days ago, maybe now, Pence, the vice president, semi-warned, commanded, if you live outside of the United States and you're a citizen, you need to come home now. Your window's closing, whatever that means. You have about a 2-week window, he said. And then today, the United States is no longer, as of today, the United States is no longer issuing new passports. And the only thing I can think about that is, I mean, if you wanted a new passport right now, it would be because you want to leave, and they don't want to allow that.
Yeah,
So that's kind of.
I can take a minute to tell my story because I was in Nevada a couple of weeks ago, and when this started happening, I did not want to get on a plane, and I was planning on driving from Nevada back up to Fairbanks for the summer, and my passport expired in February, and I hadn't renewed it, so I put in my renewal, and it said it would take 6 weeks, and so I figured I would just wait it out. And then in the meantime, the border closed. And that was kind of the end of that plan. And because my passport hadn't come in yet. And it was supposed to come in at the end of that week, but it was going to take another couple of days to get shipped down from Fairbanks back to Nevada. And so I kind of got to experience that trapped feeling where my options started to narrow. And I got on a flight and made it before Alaska shut down, and I did a 2-week self-isolation anyways. And but yeah, it was I remember reading the news, and every day it was like, man, do I double down on this plan, or do I just get on a plane right now? And then finally they announced the border closure, and it felt real when that was happening. So, and it did not feel good. Like I felt safe where I was, and then having my plan kind of go sideways, and then going through airports and stuff did not feel good. Yeah, my passport did show up, so I have a new 10-year passport.
I don't understand why they would stop issuing them.
Well, there was one stipulation that you could get
Medical
like
emergency.
a 72-hour pass for a family death. I don't know
What does that
means.
mean? You can leave for 72 hours, but then you have to be back?
No, on 72-hour notice, you can get an emergency passport, but you need a death certificate, something from a morticianer, or a letter from a doctor that presumably says somebody's terminal, and it has to be in English.
Why stop issuing them, though? It's not like, I mean, if they decide to close the border, or if they decide to do a quarantine thing when you're coming back, like let's say, okay, all people, citizens are not entering the country have to do a 14-day quarantine. Who cares if you issue some new passports or not? Like, I don't understand.
Because they're only outbound.
The policy. Right. So it's really the border wall closing the people in.
Yeah, the only ostensible reason I can think is that to renew your passport, you have to send the old one in, and they may perceive that as a threat to the people that opened the envelopes or whatever. But kind of weak. There's stuff you can do there, and I think they just open it, scan it, see that it's the numbers match, and then destroy it. So.
Mm-hmm. So you think
a little bit like. I was just going to echo what you said there, Dave. It's a little bit what Ron Paul has been telling us for the last 10 years about the wall. It's not to keep them out. It's to keep you in.
Well, I mean, if you think you, you think you, you think you, you think you, you think 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 That's an interesting. I'll have to think about that. What's the purpose?
Unless
That
they're
gets
Is it
just
financial?
unless they're short-staffed, that would be the other thing. If they're running a skeleton crew because everyone's working at home or not working.
But if it was something they wanted to do, they wouldn't be short-staffed.
Sure. It's weird.
I mean,
It falls
anything
under
that
the
they want
category
to
of weird.
happen magically happens.
It's a little bit like the FDIC saying, "Don't take your money out."
Remember all those people who put it in mattresses? Didn't work well for them. And then Bob's talking about the people in Yugoslavia who had dollars in their mattresses,
Right.
who own the city now.
Yeah.
Worked out okay.
Don't leave. It won't work out for you. Remember all those people that escaped England back in the 16 and 1700s? Look at them.
And went to America. Yeah, look at them. Now they can't get passports issued.
Yeah.
Look at them; they're dead.
Oh yeah. None of them are still
All
alive.
of them.
Whoa.
Every single one.
Whoa.
100% death rate.
Pretty scary.
Whoa. Yeah,
Have
I
you
don't know.
had the number up lately? Is anyone? Okay.
Oh, the deaths?
Oh,
I
the
got kicked out there
phone
for a while.
number.
Oh, the phone
Oh,
number.
the phone
Yeah.
number. I'm sorry.
Yep. It'd be great to hear from Rick. Yes. And the phone's working good now. It's not going to blast weird stuff. Please give us a ring, Mr. Rick. The weirdness of the situation continues to be weird. Just like there's so many contradictory policies. It's like, yeah, competing narratives. I think that's really good, Corey. Competing narratives.
Well, what's fun is for me personally, different people I know that I trust their judgment and their thoughts, the guys on our group message, and then a few other guys, some of the guys that are on here. You ask, just like you said with the competing narratives, what do you guys think? And everyone's I don't know. Gonna have to wait and see. Don't know. None of us. I talked to my banker the other day and asked her what the bank's general idea was. She's a manager here, so she's on the inside a little bit, and she said we don't have a clue what we're doing. No one in our bank has ever experienced anything like this before. We're taking it a day at a time. Said right now the only thing we're worried about is we're supposed to be getting rental money from people that own rentals and stuff like that. We're not going to get it. So what are we going to do with those people? So we don't have a clue. We've never seen this before.
You said
But keep your money here.
when lots of people are saying, "Let's wait and see," I don't know. That reminds me of when you're like doing trading and you look at the market depth and the market is very shallow. It means that a little bit of money can swing the market very quickly, and everybody's waiting to see which way things are going to go. And it's for people that do pick a direction and start running. The effect is a lot more noticeable, and the chance that people start following is pretty high. Everybody's waiting for somebody to make a move.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond weird. Yeah. Beyond weird. I'm going to post this GLS Shackle. This is another guy. This is the guy Wenzel mentioned. I put it earlier in the chat. I'm going to read his stuff tonight. He was talking about this, what did he call it? Like a kaleidoscope, basically, where you look in and as you turn it, everything changes. Rick is too essential to call in. That's cool. We'll have the lines up tomorrow for our show as well.
Essentialist.
too essential. I talked to my buddy in Japan yesterday, and it was very interesting. He buys the odd gold coin now and then, and he said it was funny because I asked him what the Japanese government was doing, and he said I think their official policy is they're mailing 2 N95 masks to every household. That's what they're doing. And anyway, he had an interesting take on it, which was that, like, why bother is kind of what he said. And then I asked him what he thought about what the Western countries were doing. And he said he could understand the bailout money, well, all the policies to keep businesses afloat while they're closed, but also saw the downside. There's this inflation downside. And it was interesting to hear. So, he had multiple opinions on it. It will be interesting to see. It was good to hear that Japan is doing things so differently. Not that I think they're doing it better or right or whatever, but it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Like, we're going to get to watch currencies on the other side of this and see how it plays out. And their response has been very different. The trains in Tokyo are still running in Tokyo. Tokyo is 25 million people. Trains are standing room only. So officially they have a social distancing rule, but the trains are still full. Everybody's there. So there's a different experiment being conducted there than in New York City. It's 2.5 times or 3 times the size of New York City. So what's going to happen? I don't know. He offered the following opinions, which I thought were interesting on top of that. He said that one thing that's for sure is that people who don't have to go to a place to do work are going to be much better off than people who do, not just from this crisis, but probably in the future going forward, because the desire of businesses to centralize in a location is probably going to be way lower going forward. The other thing is that he sort of pointed out that has a domino effect into urban real estate. Like, urban real estate already has some big downsides in this environment, right? Getting food and distancing yourself from people if there is an outbreak. But a lot of people who live in high density areas, they have roommates or whatever because it's expensive. For a lot of them, the office is sort of a home away from home. It's how they get out of their house. It's their other living space. And if offices are an idea whose time has kind of gone, then the idea of, like, working from home when you have a really tiny apartment gets old much faster than working from home when you have a house where you have a living room and your office and your bedroom and your kitchen and your basement and your backyard. So he kind of pointed that out. It'd be very different. And his employees, he has a language services company. They had a 2-week lockdown there, basically, and then it's back to normal right now. He said all of his employees, like, they didn't just punch the clock for 40 hours. They got a full week's worth of work done remote. His business was essentially unaffected. His customers were affected, which will have a net impact on him. But the structure of his business being able to do that, he was pretty happy with how that worked out. He thinks that, much like the reorganization in supply chains, he thinks that a lot of businesses are going to probably look to pursue that model going forward after this.
But so much of like the American economy is consumption based. I mean, not really even in the creating new valuables or whatever. It's go out to eat, go bowling, go watch a movie, go buy clothes, go buy, it's everything's consumption, and people have to go to work to be able to provide that. And whether or not they'll be, a lot of those places might not even be there.
They might not be there. So he was talking about the economy being reorganized in a way where a lot less people go to work per se. There are jobs that can already be done remote. a good example would be, let's say you have a manufacturing business where you actually do have to make stuff. Your accountant doesn't need to be in the office every day.
Right.
And your supply chain management guy doesn't need to be in the office every day. And even your assemblers don't need to be in the office every day. They can work 410s. There's a bunch of different ways people, or there's assembly steps. There's certain stuff like with the widgets I make, one of the steps is putting the sticker on the case, right? I can send my guy home with a box of cases and a box of stickers and say, hey, do 500 of these. So there's upsides and downsides to that. But he was kind of like looking at this as like the perceived essentialness of having the office. He doesn't think is going to hold up very well on the other side of this, and so that remains to be seen. But that has implications for commercial real estate and for regular real estate. Like there could be a lot more people looking for homes because the world we may be moving into is one where you have to spend a lot of time at home. That was kind of where he was going with it, which was interesting.
The new economic model.
But like Wenzel was saying, he expects a manufacturing surge. I sort of expect that. I mean, that's reasonable. It made a ton of sense. And I think a lot of that manufacturing is going to be domestic because the whole international supply chain thing, I think people are going to be spooked about. And some of that, there's just going to have to be people going places. But those aren't really offices. Those are a little different.
And then there's the whole thing with increased U.S. manufacturing combined with higher wage controls, and then the effects that has on automation. Automation is just it's a button you push when the market says that your labor is too expensive. And that, I think that threshold comes down over time with them.
Back to who knows.
Yeah, back to who knows. But yeah, the consumer, I mean, your point, Josh, about the consumer, American stuff being consumer driven. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens on the other side, especially with a couple, if people get these checks and they don't have to pay their mortgage right away. We'll see how many dollars they emerge with on the other side. It'll be weird.
Depending on, a lot of the smaller mom and pops might not reopen. They might just see it a benefit to. This is a better time as any, good a time as any to just bail, stop. Where the chains, I know we've talked about it before, but the chains, for one, they're plugged in better. They'll have a better idea of how to get the stream of money from DC, and DC be more open to making sure that they are going than the mom and pop outfits are. So they'll be a lot stronger to emerge on the other side for sure.
Yeah, and I think we all know that at times a lot of small businesses only operate because the owners take a hit. They work at less than what they would make somewhere else, and they're the buffer when things aren't going well. So why put up with that if everything's broken?
Wait, are there times where that doesn't happen?
Try to make myself feel better here.
Yeah, why take the risk? Oh, we are getting a call. All right. Hey, caller, you are on Patriots Lament.
Hey, this is the Essential Rick.
Hey, Essential Rick.
Yeah.
Sounding good.
Hey, I broke free, so I'm able to call in real quick. So one of the things you were asking about numbers for today, and one of the things I was seeing people saying, that the COVID virus, as far as on the daily death list, have you seen that one?
No.
Well, basically there were some people I was reading today, and they were commenting on a Paul Craig Roberts article about the truth of what's really going on, etc. And they were saying that COVID is number 11 on the list, because what they're doing is they're taking the total deaths and then dividing that by the number of days since we had our first case. And one of the things is that's not the way you do it. It's not divided over the number of days, at least the way they're tracking it. It's, there's a really good graphic. Where is that? I could send it to Josh or something. But it shows the number of deaths and how the COVID virus has climbed that ladder, the scale, over probably started about the 20th of March. And that's when the deaths picked up, and it went from number 15 on the list, and it's now sitting at number 3 on the daily death rate, right behind cancer and heart disease.
Okay.
I thought that's interesting because I think if we're not at that flattening or the peak of the curve, I'd say in about 8 days it's going to pass cancer as the number 2 cause of death in the United States.
That's very interesting. If you dig up that link and send it to us, we'll talk about it on the show tomorrow. That'd be really interesting.
Rick, what do you think about measuring that in deaths per day versus deaths per year? Is that what you're getting at?
Well, yes, I am. That's because that's what they're doing. They're looking at it as averaged over a time span, whereas this is looking at it on a day-to-day basis, and as we currently are, and it measures over the last month, and it's in a sped up framework. So it starts at March 1st and then goes to, right now, April 1st. And I think they'll probably update it tomorrow for the 2nd. And
right. So
go ahead.
That's kind of like saying that on 9/11, 2001, terrorism was a high cause of death, but annually.
Yeah, it was probably the highest cause of death that day.
Yeah. But for the whole year, it wouldn't have shown up on any graph.
Right. Well, that's all relative. Because none of us know what the future holds for this virus, as far as whether it is going to flatten the curve. We assume it will if it follows other virus life cycles. Well, I shouldn't call it a life cycle; they're not alive. But if it follows the other seasonal patterns of viruses, it should die out here soon, or at least start. We should at least see the logarithmic climb decrease. Mm-hmm. And already, if you look at the logarithmic charts, I think it is already starting to do that. But who knows? Tomorrow, you can't just go day by day. You have to look at the pattern. So, also there was something else I was wanting to mention in regard to the. You were talking about people just getting over. Corey, you were saying you just got back here in time before they closed the border. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And my cousin just came up from Seattle area. Right before they closed the Canadian border, he got across like a day or two. They had closed it by the time he got to the Alaska-Canada border.
Okay. How did that work for him?
It's worked out great. He has an immunocompromised wife, and he was concerned that, that what was going on in Seattle was that it was getting out of hand. And
right.
He's got his daughter works in one of the hospitals there, and she was freaking out. Get your wife out of here now! We're at Death Central here. So the main point is that. Here he is from Seattle, and right after that, they started doing this 14-day quarantine. But he had been tested. He got tested on Saturday, and he left Seattle on Monday. So So he knew he was clear. But when he got to the Canadian border, you know what? He got in an argument with the border guard there on the Canadian side, because the border guard was very suspicious. He told my cousin, "You need to turn around and go home."
Yeah, my home's that way.
What's that?
He's saying his home was on the other side of the border. I'm guessing.
Yeah, he said, well, my home is in Alaska. That's what he said.
Yeah.
He said, I'm coming from Seattle. I have homes in both places, and we're heading back to Alaska. And what the guard told him, or the patrolman, or whatever they're called, he said, okay, I'm going to let you in, but you are to check into a hotel and stay there for 14 days. We will be watching you. We're tracking your license plate. And he said, okay, whatever you say, officer, and then boogied for the border.
Wow. Yep.
It had no intention of stopping for 14 days.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I was thinking about that with my border trip, about having to spend 14 days in Canada and then 14 days in like Tok.
Oh, did you?
No, I ended up flying, but I was
you
worried
thought
that
you might have
Yeah.
to. Yeah.
do it twice.
Yeah, that was before the quarantine order came down, though, right?
I would have been on the road.
Yeah, it
I would
was.
have been on the road when that happened.
Because that was mandate 11, I think, or no, 12 was the intrastate ban, and then number 10 was the interstate ban. I think I get them mixed up. There's so many of them now. Let's see.
So you were talking about graphs. There was one other graph that I came across that is pretty good. I'm going to share my screen here, and it plots total confirmed cases against new confirmed cases. And then there's no time component to the graph. You have to look at it as a animation.
Okay.
So as you go through time, as your new cases in a week drop off. So it has a bunch of countries on here, and that all the countries are following like a main series. And as their case rates or their new case rates start to decline, they fall off that main trend. So here, I'll just let
I
it play
posted
through
the link into the chat.
Okay, yeah, you just hit play, and you can see China shows up first, and then they're kind of in a linear line, and then they slow down. But it makes it easier to see when the case rates are diminishing,
Mm-hmm.
and it allows you to compare countries, and it's
It's on a log scale there.
So, yeah. So, what Bob Wenzel was saying there was kind of interesting. I saw you put up his talking points there, and his number one thing: if you're in a city, where would you want to relocate, inside the country or outside of it? One thing I wanted to relate about that is, as far as locating out of it, my cousin has an Airbnb down in Mexico in Playa de Carmen, and which is a resort town. It's a big scuba diving area. There's lots of tourism, everything. Anyway, one of his good friends down there owns a scuba diving business, and he's saying, even though Mexico supposedly hasn't gone on all these lockdowns and everything, it is dead, and business is done down there. And this guy, the scuba diving business owner, is afraid because of where he lives there. He doesn't, they don't live right on the beachfront where all the tourism is. They live off the block, back behind the beaches. Anyway, he's been storing water and food and stuff, and what he said is his neighbors are watching him. So he's afraid for his life at this point.
I pick up Richard?
Yep.
All right, Richard, going in the trunk?
Yep.
All right.
Okay. So anyway, yeah, he said he's scared for his life, and my cousin said, "I'll send you a plane ticket, but you're going to have to find your way out of there, if you want to come back to the U.S." And then I just heard, I thought it was today, maybe you guys were talking about it, that they have, that's the last, they're not letting people in anymore, or something like that. So,
That Mexico's closing their borders?
well, I thought it was the
No,
United
the US.
States closed their
Oh, the
border
US,
up tighter than can be, and like I thought they were letting people in for a certain time period, and then they were going to close it down, is what my understanding was. I could very well be mistaken on that one.
That's what it sounds like.
Pence mentioned 14-day window
When did that start?
yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah, so some people are going to get just plain, locked out, and,
Maybe they'll be the lucky ones.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know what to say as far as that goes. It's like, but it makes me rethink my position of moving outside the country. Where other people, may look at you as the gringo or the foreigner or whatever, and you know how tribalism works.
Mm-hmm.
Scapegoat.
Yeah. Yesterday, a friend on our chat group sent some Twitter videos of things going on in Ecuador, and it was basically it was kind of like some of the videos coming out of China in end of January with people bodies on the street and people in big lines at the hospital, and they had oxygen tanks out and people kind of clustered around the oxygen tanks, but it just looked like they got immediately saturated and there was no more room in the hospital. So
And where was this at? Or?
Ecuador, at their port city. I get the name.
Ecuador. Okay. Well,
It's like a big game of grass is greener, and everybody doesn't like where they are because they don't like what's going on. So they think it's better somewhere else.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. My cousin raced up here thinking Alaska was going to be spared from it, and it's like, no. As far as we know, I don't know anybody that's had it. I mean, I know I've had anecdotal stories from other friends that say they know somebody that knows somebody type thing, but I personally don't know anybody that's had this coronavirus, and I'm not sure. I'm hearing now that if you've been vaccinated, you may show a positive for the coronavirus. If you've been vaccinated for flu, you may show a positive for the coronavirus. And, and I had heard a doctor say something like that if you went out and did a random sampling in the population, you would come up to with a 10 to 15% positive rating for coronavirus just in the general population. Just on any given time, at any given time, not necessarily during the flu season or whatever, it's around us all the time,
yeah, I think that has to do with the specificity of the various tests that are out there and how selective they are.
And I think
when they get an RNA
that's
sample.
one of the problems is that it's not selective enough. Because there's several different strains of that coronavirus, and so who knows how specific they're getting, because they're fast tracking these testing kits and everything like that. And I heard one guy saying that there are a number of false positives, and I also heard that there are up to like 30% false negatives with the CDC test kits.
Also, from what I understand, I was talking with a doctor in Nevada. He was saying that it's hard to compare countries because every country is using their own internally developed test kit. It sounded like there's no one standard that everyone is testing.
No standard, right?
So even within the U.S., I remember there was news that University of Washington had come out with their own test kit because they couldn't get the FDA ones. So they right there you have one country that has multiple tests going on.
Yeah.
Which just means that
And then there's a whole other thing too. With you guys talk earlier, I didn't come into the show till I didn't see you guys were on. But did you guys talk about this thing where people are going out and finding empty hospitals where supposedly they're being overwhelmed and stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yep, we talked about that on Wednesday. I think we linked up the video.
And yeah, I've watched several of those videos, and I don't know what to make of it. We were gonna, I was talking Scott and myself and Michael and everybody were talking the other day on, I think day before yesterday on the phone after the show when you guys were on, and we were going to go to our own hospitals and look in each town where we were at and take a look and see what we could see. But like here at FMH, they've shut everything. You're not allowed to go in there if you don't have a medical emergency. You're not,
Right.
they have guards at the door to screen you out. And so you're not going to get in there to see, really, unless you claim, oh, I need a test or, I have the coronavirus or something. Which I think now that would be dangerous to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because that'd be giving false testimony
Well,
or something,
One of the problems with that, I think, is, Robert or Wenzel talked about, we see even libertarians going, oh, we've got to make these measures happen because of, this or that. And I think it's because one of the things we're not doing a very good job at is being able to disassociate the two things or three things. We can't disassociate, is there a COVID-19 problem with, does that justify the government's reaction? There's no disassociation right there. You either believe in that it's bad, so if you do, then you have to agree with everything that they're doing. And if you don't agree with what they're doing, then, oh, well, you think there's no coronavirus out there? Rah, rah, rah. So we're not allowed to disassociate the two. And we should.
Yeah, they're trying to
But
do
we're not allowed to. We're made to look like. Yeah, we're made to look like, oh, you just don't care and blah, blah, blah. That's like with these, in my mind, I'm just thinking more and more, what if the hospitals, so what if they're not full? Does that justify what the government's doing? What if they are full and everything they're saying is correct? Does that justify shutting down the economy, saying that you can't leave your house, you can't go to your job, and pumping trillions upon trillions of dollars into the economy?
Well,
And that's where we have to. Right. You can hold both positions and not be wrong.
Right. Well, and did you see that just before you guys came on there? Bob put up a post on the Malibu paddleboarders that had been arrested.
Yes.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
And and he wasn't violating anybody's social distancing.
Yeah.
He was out getting some vitamin D and some sunshine. And they shut him down and arrested him. Chased him with a police boat.
Paddle faster, I hear sirens.
Yeah. Well, I read in a story that he ran for the shore, paddled for shore, and they caught him on the shore then. So he didn't make it. But still, that just shows it has nothing to do with the virus. It's entirely to do with control and ordering you and you obeying. So, and I don't know how much longer it's going to last. I'm already sick to death of it. Of being cooped up. Going home at night, not being able to talk to my friends except on the phone or anything. Can't talk to them in real life, and I'm just tired of that.
No more going to lunch.
Yeah. What's that all about? Or my favorite thing was like Saturday morning, go to breakfast or something. like that, or go to brunch after Patriots Lament or something,
And at the same time, it's probably not the right time to be the stickler, the sore thumb in the whole machinery either.
No. As a matter of fact, I totally agree. I think you need to fly under the radar.
Yeah. Especially with the way that they're tracking everyone.
And the way that it's, neighbors are doing the see something, say something thing, It's like,
you could go on a walk and not take your phone with you.
Yeah, he's going outside. Look at that, So, like jealousy of some kind, it's like, well, he's going outside. He went to the store twice,
Well, the jealousy plays a big part with people narking on their neighbors.
Well, yeah.
I can't do it.
I just never thought I'd lived never thought I'd live in Czechoslovakia or what was, I think it was Hungary was the one that was really bad, where they ended up, I think they ended up killing their dictator eventually, but
Romania.
after the wall came down. Yeah. Oh, Romania. That's what it was. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good time to pay attention and to remember what things used to be like. Like it's interesting interacting with kids, so to speak, because TSA's been around for 19 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Jeez, that's hard to believe.
Yeah, it is hard to believe. And this will be another one of those. In 2040, there's going to be a bunch of people who are like, oh, what are you complaining about? Like, I remember in 2019.
Back in my day.
Right, before COVID. So it'll be important to, I think it's an important time to pay attention to what's changed and then to remember what's changed. And to use that to make decisions going forward. Because obviously, the dot-com bubble was a once-in-a-lifetime event. And then 9/11 was a once-in-a-lifetime event. And then the 2008 crash was a once-in-a-lifetime event. And now this is a once-in-a-lifetime event. And so that's 4 of them, I think, since I've been kind of nominally an adult. And with each one, I've been a little bit better prepared to make decisions around them. So I think, even if we're not, I think there's a lot of ways to take action, and one of them is to pay attention and reposition your pieces on the board appropriately, which is what we're trying to figure out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and for me, it's because I'm nearing the so-called retirement age, and it's making me have to rethink everything now, because I thought I had a little bit longer time frame, and now I'm beginning to think that time frame has been severely shortened, So,
yeah, it feels
I was trying to work everything out to where I could, retire at my so-called governmental retirement age, and be able to go do the things I had planned and do that full time. But now I don't know that any of that will be viable, because of I don't know if you're going to be able to live a nomadic lifestyle in the United States anymore, because they'll track you everywhere you go, and whoops, are you guys there? Did I lose you?
Mm-hmm, we're here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sounded like it was breaking up. But I just don't know. I'm having to rethink the whole thing, So,
But how much we've talked about.
I told my wife it may be that we have missed the opening, and we may be staying here. I don't know. If I'm going to be able to get out from under my house. I don't know. So I mean, I can get out from under it. I can walk away from it if I have to. but you know, at the same time, I'd prefer not to do that, because that, for a lot of people, myself included, that's a good chunk of my equity that I have in life. You know?
Yep.
Mhm.
Well, you know, we've heard it more than once. We've said it more than once. You know, they are doing a trial run. We have to maybe look at it as a trial run for ourselves too. I mean,
Yeah.
they're conducting a
Well,
trial run maybe and adapting to it, and then we need to consider it a trial run and adapt to it too.
Well,
Things
see,
aren't the same as it
what's not me is
was 2 months ago.
Normally I would be much better prepared than I was, but we've been slowly liquidating things, you know, in preparation to getting ready to sell the house. So I haven't been stocking as much stuff, you know, because that much more I have to get rid of. I can't take it with me, type of thing. And, you know, so it caught us down somewhat. I mean, I still have pretty adequate supplies. I can last a few months, but you know, normally I like to keep a year's supply on hand, you know, for food and toilet paper and all that stuff. I've always kept that, you know, pretty good stocks, and this time I did not have that, you know, so it was kind of worrying when all the toilet paper disappeared, and you know, and it was maddening too, because it's like it just came out of nowhere. It seemed like that people just completely panicked over it. I haven't seen anything, you know, people's reaction were actually, I think, more frightened and scared this time than during 9/11. I don't remember shortages during 9/11. You know? Do you guys remember that? Were there shortages?
No, 9/11 was way
Not that
more
I
mild.
remember.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know?
They
I
were even
remember it was-
encouraging us to go buy stuff.
9/11 was
Oh yeah,
over.
George Bush. Go shopping. Yeah, that was George W.
9/11 was over at the end of the day, and there's no end in sight. It's not clear
we
that.
didn't know that at the time, though. We didn't know that at the time. We thought we were at war. You know, I mean, they didn't know when the attacks were going to stop. Plus, then we had the anthrax scare right after that. You know, which you know has been proven to have come from a U.S. government laboratory. You know, they harassed that one guy till he committed suicide over it, and then it turns out he had nothing to do with it. And you know, because the government had to, they were trying to generate fear, and they did. But
I think a lot of it has to do with what Dave just put in the comments is, you know, it's a continual 2-week notice. We're given a 2-week notice, but that 2 weeks never ends.
yeah.
I mean, it's still 2 weeks.
You mean as far as the quarantine? Or the,
Right. When are they going to let us get back to normal? It's every 2 weeks. Well, in 2 weeks we'll look at it. Well, in 2 weeks we'll look at it. Well, in 2 weeks we'll look at it.
Well, and they went 4 weeks. This time it's till the 30th. This time, so that's a 4-week shutdown. And I suspect, you know, unless somehow Alaska's curve changes, we're gonna go for another month after that. I think. I think they'll declare, you know, because we're behind the curve as far as the rest of the U.S. So, you know, I think it's very
Saying,
possible.
you know, on his live.
May 30th.
Well, Trump.
Sorry.
Josh, you might want to kill your video. It may have done that.
We're getting bandwidth. Yeah. We'll see if they re-up for another month. Yeah, I mean, there's so many narratives. I thought one of the interesting things about Bob Wenzel's talk was he said, well, they got to get it going again because, you know, they live off the rest of us. he didn't quite use those words, but that's kind of what he was saying.
I totally agree. They parasites need a host.
Mm-hmm.
That's not always true. So there's this book called The Dictator's Handbook, and one of the things that it points out is that if you look at countries that have lots of natural resources and unstable governments, they don't need to harvest taxes from their populations. They can just use whatever the resource of that country is.
Similar to Alaska.
Yeah. When the money comes from the resources and not the people don't have representation. And what we've seen in the U.S. is that it doesn't really produce anything. It's primarily, the economy is driven by financial institutions. So that the people don't have to be productive because the main export is dollars created by the U.S. government.
Yeah.
That's the resource that the U.S. provides to the world, is liquidity.
Mm-hmm. And as long as everybody's going down, it's really, really true that they can just keep printing dollars and nobody has to really do to work.
Yeah, and you don't need a population to support that endeavor.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true. In fact, then you can spread your large S over the remaining few.
Mm-hmm.
To make them happy. Yeah, boy, I tell you guys, I'm considered essential personnel, and having to go out and work on equipment for businesses and state offices, etc. And yet, I think I've had, I want to say, 2 service calls in the last 2 weeks. So, I'm sitting there like the Maytag repairman waiting for people to call, but people don't want us coming into their environment.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'm getting, that depresses me. I cannot stand sitting around twiddling my thumbs. That just drives me crazy. And so, I'm considering taking leave without pay, just to go sit at home and wait till this is over.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I'm in a position financially where that's not going to hurt me. But for a lot of people, a lot of my coworkers and stuff, they can't go paycheck to paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I know that that's supposedly like 80% of the American public is in that boat, from what I read. But I may well be in that boat shortly if the dollar collapses. So, we were talking about that. We were talking about that on the show the other day about taking your money out of the bank and putting it into other things. And it's like, I could take money out of the bank and close my accounts, but then, what am I going to do with it? If it turns worthless, if it collapses or they reissue another currency or whatever, it just becomes, less soft toilet paper.
Mm-hmm. We're all facing the practical problem of how do you actually deal with this sort of like potential death of a currency. Like many of us have talked about it for a long time, 10 or 15 years. Now we face the practical problem of it. It's actually a lot more tricky.
I'd say a lot of the people that have been talking it for a long time are at a disservice because it's become a myth, right? It's been mythologized. It's been always about to happen for so long that everyone just believed it was some future event, and they stopped believing it would actually happen or that they would see it.
Sort of a normalcy bias.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes normal to be saying that it's going to collapse.
But it's kind of like saying that Jesus is coming back.
Yeah. It's always about to happen.
The imminent and the inevitable. Not the same thing. Yeah. we are going to. I think we're gonna wrap it up. And oh, here's Josh back. You're gonna be able to listen and call in tomorrow, Rick?
Yeah, I should be able to. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Would love to hear from you.
Are you going to be on the at the regular Patriots Lament hours or any
Regular hours. Yep.
regular hours? Okay. I'll be looking for it then.
Cool.
That sounds good. Good to talk to you guys.
Good talking to you, Rick. We'll see you tomorrow.
Talk to you later, Rick.
Okay. Thanks for the show. Appreciate it.
I think there was just
Bye.
2 quick little things on our list. One is that the CDC now recommends that Americans wear face masks, which is quite a reversal, because that was quite controversy when they came out saying you were better off not putting stuff on your face, and a lot of people were not too convinced
Which
by that.
didn't make any sense.
Yeah, especially when
That
there was healthcare workers
dumbest
that
thing
were
they said.
wearing scarves, right? It was just obviously a double standard. And I think they would have got a much better response if they had been honest and said, we just don't have masks. If you can donate your masks to the healthcare workers, people probably would have done that. And then trust would have been established. But by saying, it's not helping you, people knew they were being lied to, and then they probably tried to hoard it more. One other one, Josh had sent this. I saw it yesterday too. There's a altercation near the Bahamas, I guess, with a German cruise ship and a Venezuelan Navy vessel. The cruise ship was designed for Arctic tours, so it had a ice hardened bow and hull, and it ended up ramming and sinking the Venezuelan Navy ship, and they did not stop to aid the survivors in the water, but nobody was killed or injured. Venezuela just lost a Navy ship to a cruise ship.
A destroyer. That is awesome. Apparently, they were trying to ram the cruise ship to force it into Venezuela. They said it was in Venezuelan water, so they kept ramming it. And the front of their ship is, like you said, it's hardened. It's an icebreaker, basically. So
yeah, there's a picture.
It broke some ice.
There's a picture of the bow on. I found a shipping. It's like a news site that covers shipping stuff and boats, and you can see all the ribs in the bow are spaced like 6 inches apart because very tough hull.
Something to learn there. It's kind of like watching 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Do you guys mind if we just real quick bring up Prince Charles in his little talk at the that forum that he was at? Was it the G20?
I don't know what that
Maybe
was. I
it
think
was
that
some
was like
economic.
I think that was like a royal summit.
Okay. But his talk focused on the environment and how we need to radically, do radical to save the world from global warming and whatever. And, he said that we need a new economic model, completely new economic model. And interesting that this has been, you can see it just about any time. Someone's reporting on how wonderful this is for the environment because all the ozone layer holes have closed and there's no pollution anywhere, and except for the new one in Antarctica, however that happened. But it's just kind of interesting with his discussing a new economic model and then them reporting, is this the new economic model they're talking about? Because it's obviously saving the earth by killing off the humans. You can just see this down the line where they say, well, look, when we shut this area down or when we stop doing this or that, all the wonderful things that happen. It's interesting. It's going to be plenty grabbers on to different situations.
Did you read any of the comments on that video?
I read a bunch of the comments on the
remember
video.
that.
They were, I would say, a lot of the support was quasi-religious sounding.
I would agree with that.
Your Highness,
Yeah, yeah,
Highness.
yeah. Very thankful that he would be their new king.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, Josh. That is something, I was asking Bob about that a little bit, and I guess we'll find out. We'll find out what gets reversed and what doesn't. But it is an odd coincidence that all of these policies line up with everything they were asking for right before.
Feasibility test.
Is there, yeah. How many in life?
Mhm. Yeah. Cool. Well,
That's
I am.
everything on the list. Yeah.
Yep, I think
That
we
was a
got
great
them.
show.
So see you guys tomorrow for the regular show at the regular time, 9 a.m. Alaska time to noon Alaska time for the Patriots Lament Saturday show.
Yep. Hope to
Might
get a lot of calls.
Even do it from work.
Oh, so you got bandwidth. Yeah.
That's great.
You should put some in a bottle and bring that bandwidth home with you.
Yeah, take some home.
Bring it
Store
back.
it up.
Yeah.
All right. See you guys.
There's enough people. There might be enough people here to.
Yes.
Oh. Subscribe. And yeah. Remember to like and pass it on to other folks.
Yes, for sure. Yep. If you're listening, kick the link out to others and be sure to tune in tomorrow. Cool. Well, good talking to you. I will catch up with you tomorrow morning.